Okay, so what we're looking at here on the screen here, this is not included in the Breadbox report. This is purely for agent use in this particular webinar, but I thought this would be a really cool thing for you guys to look at here. Again, these numbers are replicated from the Breadbox report. The best 40-year period, the median 40-year period, the worst 40-year period. The reason why I wanted to show you this is that kind of yellowish orange line. Guess what that is? That line represents the same numbers that are depicted in the carry illustration of the cash surrender value net of loans with the same contributions and the same parameters. Obviously, in the carry illustration, you're showing a fixed rate of return with a fixed participating loan rate, et cetera, which we'll get into in a second. But I wanted you just to see those top three lines in our proxy, right? In our hypothetical synthetic asset. Those are the account values. And just to see how those stack up to the numbers in the carrier illustration as they showed the cash value. Why is this so important? Let me show you. Okay, the income that was drawn down in the best, median, and worst 40 was $208,000 a year. And we started in year 21 and went through year 40. In the worst 40, you see the little asterisk there. You can refer down to the little explanation at the bottom of the screen left-hand corner. Starting in year 33, we had to reduce the income drawdowns to be less than $208,000 because of the poorer performing historical look-back period. So the total income drawdown was $3.3 million in the worst 40-year period, just as a side note. Okay, in the carrier illustration that we ran at 5.18%, the maximum income we could draw down in the carrier illustration was $152,000. Now look at the difference there. Huge difference. In the carrier illustration, we could not illustrate a multiplier bonus, so there's no multiplier charge in that either. And again, that was run at a static 5.18%. Okay, total return. The total return is the total cumulative income drawn down plus the ending account value in the 40th year. In the best 40-year period, it was 11.9 million. The median 40 was 7.5 million. The worst 40 was 3.8 million. If we look in the carrier illustration that we ran, and we look at the total income drawn down plus the cash surrender value net of loans in the 40th year, that number is 3.3 million. Interesting, right? Pretty big disparity there. The IRR in the best 40 was 8.52%. The median 40 was 7.43%. The worst was 5.76%. In the carrier illustration, again, we did an IRR, a net IRR calculation based off of the premium going in and the income drawn down and the cash surrender value at the end of year 40. And that produced a 4.90% internal rate of return. Now, the other interesting thing we did is we said, okay, let's run the carrier illustration, but let's include the multiplier charge. Now, as some of you know, based on the new AG 49A restrictions, if you run a carrier illustration and show a multiplier, it is going to take into consideration the multiplier charge, but not take into consideration the multiplier credit. Now, in this particular carrier, it allows you to run the illustration at 6.10% if you're opting for their multiplier. And this one, we used a medium multiplier option. And in this case, you could draw down $143,000 in income, which was even less than the previous carrier illustration version of $152,000. The total return at the end of 40 years was now 3.2 million as opposed to 3.3 million. And the internal rate of return, the net IRR, was 4.77% versus 4.9%. Now, again, where are we showing all this? Well, in a real world situation, the way we envision an agent using this is that you would use our Breadbox report in conjunction with the carrier illustration. Again, to be very clear, this is not a supplemental carrier illustration. This is a third-party report that models a hypothetical synthetic asset that acts as a proxy for an IUL that just behaves similar to an IUL. Not exactly the same, but similar, okay? Again, look at the bottom right-hand corner there. So it's really interesting. The worst 40, again, put this into perspective now. The worst 40 in the hypothetical synthetic asset showed a 0% floor, a 10.5% cap, an 80 basis point asset-based charge to get the higher cap. It showed a multiplier charge to get the multiplier. And in the worst 40-year period of the 121 different ones we ran, it produced a net IRR of 5.76%. And the carrier illustration run at 5.18% static with a participating loan rate that was 50 basis points less than that actually was receiving a persistency bonus, that our worst 40 scenario in the synthetic asset was not receiving a persistency bonus. And based upon all of that, still produced a substantially greater IRR than both depictions in the carrier illustration. Again, why would you want to show a client this? To show them that in a real world situation, volatility is actually going to happen most likely. You do have a real floor and a real cap. You do have a real participating loan rate. We used a participating loan rate of 5% in our hypothetical synthetic asset here, when the actual participating loan rate in a like-kind real-world product was 4.65%. Still produced a darn good outcome. Again, this page right here is not included in our Breadbox report. This was just for the purposes of educating the agents in this webinar here. But again, I thought it was really compelling to take a look at just how things stack up with all this volatility and this synthetic asset compared to what is depicted in a carrier illustration.